smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome, guys. Miss Liz is in the house, and that's right, it's Friday. So, yes, it is a different day. And you know what? Sometimes we need those little switches in life, because today I think I need this guest who's in the house today. She's really, really touching my heart. We had some conversation before we came live, and I think we're going to really enjoy Nancy's cup of tea this afternoon. So, if you haven't followed Miss Liz on my platforms on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of those places, run on over, give them a follow, subscribe, because your follow does make a difference. Because then you can share and get these tea times out there. Because without sharing these tea times, what difference are we really making, right? So I want to tell everybody that I really appreciated all of you guys tuning in last night for the Golden Tea when I shared my personal story on my writing journey. So I want to thank you for that. But this afternoon we have Nancy Landrum in the house, and we're going to be talking about marriage and loving it and all that good stuff. And you know how marriage is for Miss Liz. So I think I'm going to enjoy this conversation with Nancy. So let's get started with the disclaimer, and then we're going to get an intro of Nancy, and then we're going to spill some tea. We don't serve the beverage, we serve real life stories here. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicated to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith and health. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to this discussion. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including, but not limited to, trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotional triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate and comment on or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. Miss Liz welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect those wishes and will welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Now, a little bit of intro on my guests. Let me get that for you. And I really want to just say thank you to my guests for showing up. Nancy Landrum. Today at Tea Time with Miss Liz, I am honored to welcome a truly inspiring guest, Nancy Landrum. Nancy is an author, relationship coach, and speaker who has dedicated her life to helping couples build the kind of love that lasts. As the author of How to Stay Married and Love It and several other practical guides, she brings both professional wisdom and personal experiences to the conversation. After navigating the struggles of marriage herself, Nancy turned her challenges into a mission to give couples the tools they need for better communication, deeper connection, and lasting love. Through her coaching programs, workshops, and books, she has touched countless lives, showing partners that marriage can not only survive but thrive when joy, respect, and intimacy. Her compassionate yet practical approach has made her a trusted voice in the field of relationships, empowering couples worldwide to transform conflict into connection and create marriages they truly love. Please join me in welcoming Nancy Landrum to Tea Time with Miss Liz.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction and for having me on your show, Miss Liz.
Well, thank you so much. And you know what? The universe does this, right? It gives me these little hiccups, and I think that it was meant to be today.
Okay.
And I believe that today was a good time for us to join and have some cup of tea together. So, Nancy, tell me a little bit about who Nancy was as a little girl and who's Nancy now.
Would you repeat that question? I didn't quite get it.
Who was Nancy as a little girl and who is Nancy now?
As a little girl, I was very, very shy and quiet and wanted to stay in the background. And my mother was very social. And whenever she had guests over for dinner, I would bake her. I'd go without dinner to avoid being at the table with people I didn't know. Thankfully, she didn't let me do that. So it's been a lifetime of learning that I don't need to be afraid of people. It was, I was an adult actually when I was learning some NPR techniques and did a belief change that most people are safe. And if I am unsafe, I will know it and I'll know what to do. And that made a huge difference in my life, as well as in my 50s. I woke up on my 50th birthday and decided if I was going to get my master's degree, I'd better get started. And
I really love that, Nancy, because you know what? At 50, you're giving people hope that are 50, you know, to go out and do stuff.
Well, in the master's program I attended, it was a very experiential program. So there were about almost 300 people in my class, and we practiced skills on each other. And so we did it in trios, 3 people. And so I sat across from multiple people with many different backgrounds, different religions, different nationalities. And you know, as the pretend therapist, as we were practicing, I heard so many stories and discovered there's so much more that we share. There's so much more that we have in common than our differences. And that kind of took the last of the people fear out of me.
Well, I think we focus so much on the differences that we don't focus on the similarities, right?
I'm afraid that when we focus on the differences, then that's where prejudice is born and where wars are started, you know, where there's, you know, vicious competition or judgment. And yet when you really have a chance and take the chance to open your heart to someone who's different on the outside than me, there's very little difference.
Yeah. I believe the same, you know, because we focus so much on the differences so that we don't have to look at the similarities, right? So we cannot get that empathy of someone else's story because we're so focused on the difference. Oh, well, I would do it this way and I would do it that way. It's almost like marriage, right? You know, well, I would have married this one or I would have married that one or, you know, so I want to get into the book because the book really, How to Stay Married and Love It, is almost like what we're talking about, you know, as similarities as a child. And that's why I always go back and I ask my guests who they were as a little one and who they are now, because it has a lot to do with who we are now as adults.
Well, my journey as far as marriage started when I was very young. I was only about 3 years old when I decided I wanted to have a much happier marriage than I observed in my parents. there was just kind of a low level of bickering going on all the time and disrespect, and occasionally it would erupt into a real fight. And it wounded me. It hurt me so bad. I wanted them to love each other and be affectionate, and I hardly ever saw that. So I grew up as quickly as I could and married young, unfortunately, I married a very good man. But my assumption was that now I could have the happy home that I longed for my whole childhood. And the problem was the only marriage tools I had in my toolbox were the ones that I had observed in my parents. So I ended up acting a lot like my mom. He was very
well, it's the repeat, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
all we know, so that's all we do. And the wounded child looks for the same similarities. Like a lot of people tell me, well, you would look for somebody like your father to marry like your father because was your example as a male role, right?
Familiar. Yes, and so the more I tried to convince him that he wasn't making me happy, of course, the more unhappy we both were. We've been married about two and a half years when I finally lay down on my olive green carpeting, shag carpeting back in the day, and just told God, I will do anything to change the trajectory of this marriage. I'm even willing to change if you'll just tell me what to do. And I'm sure God chuckled and said, okay, I finally have her attention. And I made a few very important shifts in the next few weeks that immensely improved the energy between the two of us. Everything got better, and we had a second child. We had 2 baby boys, and he left home to play softball one night with our church league and dropped dead unexpectedly from an aortic aneurysm we didn't know he had. Well, I was 23 with 2 babies and totally unprepared for that kind of trauma. It took about 5 years for life to begin to be good again, or for me to have the confidence that life could be good. I was a single mom for 13 years before I married Jim Landrum, who was also a widower with 3 children. Looking back, we were amazingly naive. We thought we were older. We'd both been through a lot. We could handle anything. But we were blindsided by the very unique challenges of step-family dynamics. The number one mistake now that I know most step-families make is they try to look and act like a nuclear family, like a first family. And the dynamics are too complex. They require different strategies. But we didn't know that, so we started fighting over who was right and who was wrong, which is the foundation of every fight. I'm right, you're wrong. And
Right. And it is something that we don't want to agree on, right? Like, who's going to wave that white flag and say, you know what? Okay, I'm the wrong person here.
Well, neither of us were willing to do that. We kept trying to, we only had one issue, but we fought about it frequently because it was something we both felt very strongly about. So gradually our communication methods deteriorated. We became more and more disrespectful to each other. My favorite was sarcastic put downs. I was really good at cutting Jim down with sarcasm. And I also became a yeller, which I hated. I didn't like being a yeller, but I just thought if you don't hear me the first time, I'll just say it louder. And finally, he began quietly saying, Nancy, the louder you yell, the less I can hear you. And he was right. But he had his favorites too. His was the finger pointing, you should have, why didn't you? Can't believe you didn't. That didn't go over very well with me either. We were like boxers in opposite corners of a boxing ring. We just kept coming at each other with the same old stuff, recycled the same old arguments. We tried to find resolutions, but our resolutions kept falling apart until finally we agreed that we needed help, which was so hard to do.
Yeah.
Like we were in our late 40s, early 50s, late 40s about that time. And to admit that we couldn't solve our own problem was humiliating. It was embarrassing. And I think that's why most couples put off getting help is we love each other. Why can't we solve this problem?
Yeah.
So, but slowly our love was being whittled away by all the disrespect. And we were fortunate eventually to find a coach who was a perfect fit for us. And she just taught us, if as long as you keep saying it this way, it's going to escalate into an argument. If you say it this way instead, then your partner might have a better chance of hearing you and understanding. We both needed anger management skills by that time. So she taught us how to take a good time out. There's a difference between just not fighting back and a good timeout says, I need 30 minutes to calm down and then I'll be back to discuss this when I can be more respectful. But some people think that they're somehow more self-righteous because they just walk away from an argument. But it doesn't resolve anything, and it makes the person you're walking away from feels abandoned and probably more angry.
Well, Nancy, we have a comment that came into the studio from Shadow. He was on Teatime in season 1. He was also the voice of the intro for for many seasons. And I'm just going to pop it up here so you can see it, Nancy. He says, usually low-level bickering or small fights in a relationship are results of childhood dysfunction, trauma, and old wounds. And it's kind of like what you said from the beginning, right? When I asked you who you were as a little girl, you were that wounded child, right? You seen what mom and dad did, so you repeated what mom and dad did.
Yes.
Why do you feel couples struggle to have good communication?
Well, because those couples who are struggling with respectful communication or disrespectful communication probably learned language skills in a family where they were treated, the adults treated each other disrespectfully or the children were treated with disrespect. So we're not going to learn respectful language on the playground at school. And most TV programs don't demonstrate respectful communication. It's a skill that is learnable. But if you don't know it, you don't know that you don't know it. You keep doing what you think is reasonable because it's familiar to you. And you don't realize that what you're doing is triggering a negative reaction. What Jim and I were doing to each other was triggering defensiveness and the desire to fight back. We couldn't hear each other as long as he was using his finger pointing you and I was using sarcastic put downs. That pretty much guarantees that your partner's not going to hear you.
So how do we get our partner to hear us, Nancy?
In our case, we needed someone to teach us how to deliver any message, to say anything we needed to say, but to say it in respectful language. The easiest way to describe the difference is disrespect almost always has the accusatory you in it. You didn't do this. I wanted you to. Why didn't you? Or it feels attacking to the receiver. Respectful language is sharing from your own point of view. Like, when this happens, I feel disrespected, or when this happens, I feel loved. When you do this, I feel like fighting back or moving away from you emotionally. It's called I language versus you language. And we we didn't know that. And we also didn't understand how important it was to share our feelings. Feelings can be shared in 3 words. I feel attacked. I feel angry. I feel disrespected. I feel hopeful. I feel loved. But I wish I had my diagram called an experience diagram. But up at the top are the facts, and the next layer down are thoughts. Thoughts include perceptions, assumptions, beliefs, opinions. All fights take place on that thought level. It's what I think versus what you think, or my perception versus yours. But when you say, when you drop down into the feelings, you're far more vulnerable. It feels powerful to share an opinion or to share angry words. Anger is such a powerful emotion. We feel powerful when we're angry. But to say, I feel sad, I feel disappointed, it's a far more vulnerable feeling. And for many people, it's just a giant leap that's hard to make. And number one. Number two, they don't know the outcome of sharing our feelings is developing emotional closeness rather than distance. When we share opinions or we fight over our opinions, it creates emotional separation. If you want emotional closeness, it's important to be vulnerable about sharing your feelings.
Nancy, we have a question that came in. Why does the respect get lost in a marriage over time?
I think it's probably the same answer that I answered before. If you haven't seen respect demonstrated for you when you're growing up, or seen your parents handle a disagreement without losing respect for each other, while still maintaining their respect and love for each other, then you don't know how. What Jim and I realized when we began working with our coach was we thought we had tried as hard. We'd done the best we could. We tried as hard as we knew how to resolve the problems in our marriage, but we didn't have the right tools. And it was learning those skills and our willingness to practice them consistently until finally the respectful methods of communicating and handling our anger became our new habits. So, learning it from a book, if you read How to Stay Married and Love It, the book that we wrote together, you'll learn the skills, and intellectually they make perfect sense. They're so simple, but they're hard to put into practice just because it's hard to change our habitual ways of communicating.
We have a comment that came in. I'm going to pull it up so you can see it. I've never heard of this word, so I'm gonna do my research. Shadow knows I will do it. That's true. It could also be genetic as well. I recommend you study it.
Epigenetics.
Reading the studies on the topic is really alarming, especially for women. I've never heard of that word, so could you share a little bit if you know what that is, Nancy?
I think there have been disrespect, particularly in the patriarchal world that we're just beginning to come out of. Women were treated like chattel, like property, and were so disrespected that finally the belief that we don't deserve any more than disrespect becomes patterned in our DNA. And that's one of the chapters in a book I'm writing is about the history of marriage and how what we expect from marriage has changed so much over the last century. We've come out of centuries of male dominance and female being disrespected and treated like property. And now we're expecting men to be more emotionally available, and they don't know how, many of them. And women are wanting to assume more power and have more of a say in their own lives as well as in the marriage. In fact, financially, it's nearly impossible in our economics today for a family to be supported with only one income. We need both the men and the women to be working, and it's changed the balance. The balance has shifted in marriage relationships, which is why we need better skills to make them work.
Well, 20 years ago, the woman was the breadwinner. She was not the man was the breadwinner, but now it's the woman that is becoming the breadwinner of the family. So the demand that we've grown up with has changed, because we grew up being told husband works, woman stays home, cleans the house, does the babies, takes care of the home, and now it's the husbands that are staying home, cleaning the house, taking care of the kids. So it has confused a lot of us. You said you're writing a book on history of marriage. Is that book coming out soon, Nancy, or?
Well, it isn't exactly the history of marriage. That's just one chapter.
Oh.
To give it some context for all the changes that we're demanding from the marriage relationship now, that 100 years ago, women got their friendship, their emotional needs met by their friends, other women friends. They didn't expect, in most cases, they didn't expect to be emotionally close to their husbands, or their husbands to know how to comfort and encourage and emotionally support their wives. That was a skill that men didn't have to know 100 years ago.
Yeah, like the whole relationship aspect has changed in relationships, marriage, even with motherhood has changed, fatherhood. So we have a couple of questions that came in for you, Nancy, and I'd like to get them out to you. How does respect play a role in maintaining both love and connection in a marriage? Is number one.
Thank you. I'm so glad that question was asked. I call, let me maybe put this up. You see this three-legged stool with broken leg? I grew up thinking love and commitment were all we needed to have a great marriage. Well, Jim and I loved each other. We were very committed, and our marriage was on the brink of failing because we didn't know how to respect each other. So what we had to learn was how to communicate respectfully, how to manage anger respectfully. And that gave us the third leg of a three-legged stool, so that now the marriage could rest because we had love, commitment, and respect. I'm a gardener. I love to garden. So I call respect the fertilizer of love. Without respect, it leaks away from the relationship and the commitment weakens. With respect, the feeling of loving each other is nurtured, and the commitment to love each other for life is there, because who would want to leave a relationship where you're treated with both love, commitment, and respect? That's what the third leg there is, the important piece that keeps love and commitment nurtured and growing. And you were going to add a second part to that question.
The next question that came along that I found that was similar is, from your coaching experiences, what are the most common challenges you see couples face, and how can they overcome them?
The most common challenge is the same challenge Jim and I had. Couples don't know how, they don't have the skills to communicate effectively and to create emotional intimacy. They haven't learned how because those skills haven't been modeled for them. Most of the couples I see come to me as a last-ditch effort before they file for divorce, or in some cases, one couple came recently who already had filled out the divorce paperwork. They'd already decided how they're going to divide their assets. And they decided to see me just in case there was some little chance that they could save this marriage. They came back 2 weeks later after their first assignment glowing. And the divorce papers were thrown away. I had them do an exercise called creating a marriage blueprint, which is each of them would write out, they would describe the marriage of their dreams. The marriage I want, in the marriage I want, we would settle all differences with kindness. We're affectionate with each other. We always speak respectfully to each other. We make decisions together. We feel like partners. We love spending time together. We support each other's dreams and goals. And then they combine their lists of how they would describe the perfect marriage for them and share their lists with each other and consolidate the two lists into one. This couple, when they walked in, said, "We have never talked like this." They had 3 appointments during the 2 weeks that we were apart of an hour each, where they forbid their children from interrupting them, and spent an hour sharing their dreams of what would be a great marriage for each of them. And they discovered they both want the same things. They just didn't know how to, they couldn't take the blueprint and build a marriage out of it because they don't have the right tools. So now we're working together for them to learn the tools that will help them build the marriage that they both want.
Nancy, how important is it for couples to have exercises together without the interruption of their children or friends and family? How important is that?
You've touched on 2 very important things. Children, just by their very nature, are very demanding of our time and attention. And yet what children want more than anything else is for mom and dad to demonstrate love for each other. So when you give a boundary to even small children, you can say, set a kitchen timer for 15 minutes. Mom and dad need 15 minutes. Don't bother us until the timer goes off. But older children, any child is reassured when mom and dad are speaking respectfully to each other. They're working something out. They're doing an exercise, whatever it is. It's reassuring because the basis of a child's sense of security comes from mom and dad, their love for each other. And I think too many parents, having a child is such a gigantic adjustment to any marriage. And as I said, children naturally require a lot of attention, but you can't forget that what holds the family together is the marriage. If the marriage isn't solid, then the family feels insecure and shaky. Children are anxious and nervous when mom and dad aren't getting along. And you also mentioned other family members. It's a mistake to take your complaints about your partner to your mom, your dad, your sister, your friend. All you're doing is gathering support for your point of view. They'll take sides, and because they love you, they'll take your side against your partner. And then no matter how well the two of you get help and work out your differences and you are happy together, the family or the friends may still be angry with your partner. Those other relationships do not belong in the sacred center of a marriage. I describe a man and a woman facing each other, but between them, there's this living entity called marriage that requires just as much attention as a small child requires. It requires time, it requires nurturing, it also requires protection. So the boundaries around your marriage are not violated by other people being involved in your marriage when they aren't an appropriate person to go to for help. And I think that many times one of your questions was about common things that bring couples to coaching. Sometimes it's because there's an emotional affair that got started on Facebook, or some relationship at work has suddenly become more important to one partner than their marriage. And it's violating that boundary of protection again. But the reason there's a vulnerability or a temptation to get your need for attention met outside of the marriage is because there's something missing in the marriage that needs attention.
Well, and Nancy, we do that, right? We go to the outside source, right? It's like the other family member or the friend. We build these teams against our partner, the partner we decided to take a commitment with, the sacred vows of marriage. And I'm big on marriage being sacred.
Yes, me too.
There's so many people nowadays in today's world that are just getting married for the party, just getting married for that big event, but not understanding why they married that person or why they're committed to that person. We're losing the sacredness of marriage in today's world.
Well, the attitude, since the passing of the no-fault divorce laws in the 60s, divorce has become so common that it's acceptable. And I've heard a lot of people refer to first marriages as your trial marriage.
Wow.
It's like they expect it. If it doesn't work out, we'll just divorce and move on. Well, what isn't understood and maybe isn't common knowledge is that second and subsequent marriages have much higher divorce rates because you take yourself with you into those second or third marriages.
You take that baggage, right? You haven't unpacked that bag yet, and you bring it into the next and the next and the next. And then that bag just gets really heavy. And by the time you're in the third or fourth marriage, well, that person has all of those past marriages in that one bag.
Not only that, but it's so easy. We human beings seem to find it so easy to blame someone else when I'm unhappy, instead of looking at what am I doing to contribute to this situation? What behaviors trigger my partner and make him or her feel defensive and want to fight back? What is it that I need to learn that I don't know right now? And then go to someone who has a good track record of helping marriages revive. In fact, that might be a good time to say that if any of your listeners want this handout, it's How to Rekindle Lost Love. And if they'd like to email me and just put in the subject line rekindle, I will send them this handout, which is a summary of how to learn the skills that will rekindle, revive love. And there's also on the back a list of 40 different ways that are common for us to use in communication that are all disrespectful. Every time you use one of those ways, it's going to have a poor result.
Wow. I'm really enjoying this conversation, Nancy, because we're getting the information out there, right? That the marriages are broken. How do we fix the marriages?
Yeah.
You brought up the blueprint. You know, when we're meeting somebody in today's world, we're asking their favorite color, their favorite foods, and everything. But then 2 weeks later, we don't care what their food is. We don't care what their color is. We don't care anything, right? We got the person. That's it. There, she's mine, he's mine, and that's it, right? So how do we get that kingle of relationship and intimacy back? And I don't mean intimacy as in sexual. I mean there's so many parts of intimacy that we do not even know about without the help of others.
What we crave is knowing I'm emotionally safe with my partner. We can talk about anything. I know I will be heard, and at least, he or she will try to understand my point of view. And any issues that come up between us, I have confidence that we're going to work them out so that we're both happy. The sadness about all the marriages that are failing is that there isn't an awareness that love can be rekindled. It can be revived. If you learn better methods of communicating and managing anger and handling conflict, the love comes rushing back. In our case, with Jim and I, as soon as we began practicing the first day, we sat down to talk about our hot issue using the language that our coach was teaching us. It wasn't very pretty. I mean, we stopped and started and did redos because we were unfamiliar with the verbiage. But we made it through 40 minutes without it escalating into a fight for the first time in years. It was so exciting, like, oh, we can talk about this and not fight. It was exhausting. And so we decided to set the issue aside for that day and come back to it another day. We stood and I stepped into Jim's open arms and he said, that felt so respectful. Let's do our best to always treat each other with respect. I agreed. What I didn't realize until later was that my goal changed that day. Previously, my goal was to prove to him, you're wrong and I'm right. After that day, my goal was to treat him with respect 24/7. And for a few weeks, it felt like I was in a verbal straitjacket. I couldn't say anything without rehearsing. What words am I using? What's my tone of voice? How will it sound to Jim? Until finally I could get something out that sounded respectful. When I got triggered by him, I would use what our coach was teaching us and say, I need 30 minutes to calm down. I'll be back. And I'd go write every nasty thing I wanted to say to him in my journal. Jim didn't like journaling, and there are other ways it's called venting. There are other ways of venting the energy of anger out of your body. But he bought a little mini cassette recorder, which we all have on our phones today. And he would tell me, I'll be back in an hour. And he'd drive to a nearby park and park off in a corner where no one could hear him, turn on the tape recorder and bawl me out good. Say anything he wanted to say, using any language he wanted, until he calmed down. And then when he calmed down, he knew it was okay to come home and talk to me about whatever had triggered him, because he could talk to me respectfully. It was an advantage. I look back now and I think it was an advantage that we were so tired of hurting each other and so tired of being in pain that when we were given these very simple practical skills, we were totally committed to using them.
Yeah.
So within a few weeks of having what I now call skilled discussions, which means respectful discussions, we were able to resolve our biggest issue, and it never became an issue again. We had 17 more years together without even a harsh word between us.
Well, it's relearning, right? and reprogram on what we were taught as a wounded child, the changing, right? And it's work. I say this: marriage is not just I do, I love you, and a big kiss, and you go happy ever after. It's a lot of work. It takes time and effort. Gregory Children's Youth Organization kind of got into what you were saying, that downtime, that cool time, right? It's okay to take a break. It's okay to say, you know what, the situation is just way too heavy right now. We're just going to go and take time out, both of us, before we end up hurting each other more.
The way that works the best, though, is if you put a time limit on it, and after you've calmed down, you agree to come back and speak respectfully about it, because there's usually one person in every partnership that's very almost desperate to solve the problem right now. And when the other person takes a time out and leaves without any agreement to return at a particular time, it leaves this person who wants so badly to resolve it right now just holding this issue without any promise of being able to resolve it shortly.
Well, it's kind of like an abandonment, right, as a child.
It feels like abandonment. In fact, that's interesting you would say that, because Jim, the pattern he saw in his parents was that when they got mad at each other, the dad would just leave for a few hours, and when he came back, his mother was fine. So he would try to do that with me, and I would just get more angry because I felt abandoned. And I finally was able to tell him, my first husband walked out the door one night and never came back. And it wasn't his fault, and we weren't angry. But when you walk out the door and I don't know when you're coming back, it's like I have PTSD.
It's a re-trigger, right? It's triggering. Yeah. It's bringing back that trauma. It doesn't mean that person's not coming back. It's just it re-traumatizes us.
Yes. So our coach told Jim, it's a good thing to leave when you're too angry to be respectful. But before you leave, go to Nancy. He would put his hands on my face or my shoulders and say, I love you. I'm not going to leave you. I need to do some venting. I'll be back in an hour. And that was all I needed. Then I was fine. I could let him go.
Then you were like, for an hour, oh boy, what's he saying? What's he doing? We go down those rabbit holes and then we go, until we learn that way of communication. Communication is number one in any relationship. Without communication, you have nothing, and I see this.
An agreement that he would never read my journals and I would never listen to his tapes. We had argued enough before that I knew what he wanted to say to me. I didn't have to listen to it.
It was like that repeat record, right? With the needle that kept going across that record. Nancy, can you give me one word you'd use to describe a thriving marriage?
Joyful.
Oh.
A thriving marriage is joyful because my needs are being met. My partner's needs are being met. We love each other. We're committed, and we're committed not just to staying together, but we're committed to always being respectful to each other. And it creates this, what Jim and I enjoyed after we did the hard work of learning these skills. It was like a constant flow of loving going back and forth between us every day, all day long. It was magical.
So, Nancy, I want to go back to the book because I want people to go and check out your book. And the book is called How to Stay Married and Love It. How did you get the name? And I see the purple. See, I knew there was a purple for a reason. Nancy's favorite color is purple. And as you can see, Miss Liz is wearing purple today. So Nancy, how did you get the title of the book? And how long did it take you to write the book? And what can people find in that book?
I started writing, I wrote the first 3 chapters, and then I got scared due to my own poor self-esteem and messages I got as a child that I got scared that it wasn't good writing and nobody would read it. And so it sat on my computer for a couple years until finally we took it to a professional editor, printed out in a 3-ring binder. And she opened it up and she started reading and she couldn't stop. She kept turning the pages. And finally, she made herself stop and she told us what she would charge us to edit the book. And I said, well, thank you, but what I really want to know is, can I write? And she threw her hands up and said, can't you see? I couldn't stop reading it. Yes, you can write. And it was like a dam broke. And I wrote this book and its sequel in over the next 4 months. They were both completed. Jim came up with a title because he wanted couples to learn how to stay married, not just to stay married, but to stay married and love it. I think it's a great title because it tells you exactly what you're going to find in the book. There's an audio version a lot of people prefer listening to a book these days. So there is an audio version with me narrating. The sequel is called How to Stay Married and Love It Even More. And it's been such a joy to see the response, particularly of couples that I coach. Reading the book as part of their assignment, along with the online course that I created teaching all the same skills called Millionaire Marriage Club.
So Nancy, we have a couple questions here. I want to get them in because I think that they're important. It says, what role does forgiveness play in staying married and loving it?
Huge role, because none of us are perfect. And we do things that hurt each other. And we may have done things in the past that deeply wounded us. What Jim and I discovered, and this isn't true for everyone, but what we discovered was as we learned and began to practice better skills, so our emotional connection was healed and restored, the need for forgiveness just sort of melted away. It happened automatically because we finally had the quality of relationship that we both craved. For other people, it has required a definite commitment to forgive. There are forgiveness practices that I share with couples who need that. The interesting thing about forgiveness is many of us have a misperception of forgiveness, that it's letting the other person off the hook. That isn't the purpose of forgiveness. The purpose of forgiveness is to free me from living with bitterness. And it often heals the relationship as well. But in my mind, the number one goal of forgiveness is so I can live without resentment and bitterness.
Nancy, how do we build trust after it's been broken?
Such a great question. Trust requires ultimate commitment when it's been broken. You have to find out what behaviors your wounded partner needs from you in order to rebuild trust in you. And then you must be willing to do those behaviors consistently over and over and over again until it's like a brick wall that's been broken down. And every time you do a behavior, like you call and let your partner know, I'm going to be about 15 minutes late, I'll see you soon. Or I'm sorry, I have to work late tonight, but I will leave work at such and such a time. I'll see you at that time. Or it may mean making sure that when you're in a social environment, you're not giving too much of your attention to someone else other than your partner. Whatever your partner needs in behavior to rebuild trust, the one who broke the trust needs to be willing to rebuild brick by brick by brick over and over again until finally trust is reestablished.
So Nancy, I want to get a little bit of your services out there. So if anybody that's looking for support and that, where can they find you and what kind of services do you offer? Do you do one-on-one workshops, all that good stuff? If you could share that.
I currently don't have any workshops planned. I primarily work with couples. I'm so grateful to you for putting my website up on the board. For those who are listening and can't see it, the website is simply nancylandrum.com. And it's Landrum, not Lundrum. Quite often I get Lundrum. Landrum, LANDRUM.com. And on the website, there's a window for contacting me. If you want this handout, email me by going to my website and just write on the title, Rekindle, and I'll send you this handout. You can also look around and see what Millionaire Marriage Club looks like. There's a page where all the books I've written are listed. And I've coached couples with Zoom, the magic of Zoom, coached them in Canada, Texas, Australia. So although most of my couples are local to the Murrieta, Southern California area, I've had great success coaching couples through Zoom as well.
Nancy, what message would you have for all the couples out there about, how to stay married and love it?
If your marriage isn't working, chances are very good that you don't have the skills you need to create the emotional connection that you are both craving. Skills can be learned. Skills take a few months of intense effort, but the wound of a marriage lasts forever. Not only for you, but for your children. I'm really lately been thinking a lot about the legacy that we all leave. All of us leave a legacy of one kind or another. Miss Liz is leaving an amazing legacy with all of the interviews she does with people that have a story to share that's worthwhile. You can choose to leave a legacy of an unhappy marriage or the legacy of divorce. Divorce tends to run in families. Happy, successful marriages also tend to run in families because our children pick up from us whatever legacy we leave them.
And Nancy, if you could sum up your mission in one sentence, what would it be?
Wow, thank you for giving me that chance. My mission is to reduce the divorce rate in our country by helping couples understand or learn or know where to go to find the healthy communication and conflict management skills they need to rekindle their love.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Teatime and sharing all of this important information out there. Thank you to the people who joined in the studio, Shadow God, and the youth, Gregory Children and Youth Organization for joining in the studio. Thank you for the people joining on LinkedIn and YouTube, Facebook, and all. Miss Liz forgot about Instagram today, so I'm sorry for all the listeners on Instagram. I forgot to put you up there. But this will be getting out on TikTok and all those other platforms as well, Nancy. So I really want to thank you for bringing that information. And thank you for giving me the space and time to get your story out there as well on my platform, because it really does make a difference getting these stories out there. Marriage is hard, but we can make a difference when we start sharing the story. So I'm just going to give a little summary of what we talked about today. And we'll be back on Tuesday and Thursday. We have 4 more tea times of Then the end of September, you will see the end of August, you will see the lineup of September. We have 18 incredible guests that are coming. We have 6 returning guests from different seasons, and we have 12 new faces and 12 new topics that Miss Liz feels that needs to be brought to the table as well. So today we had an incredible and heartfelt tea time where we shared today with Nancy Landrum. Her wisdom on communication, connection, and lasting love reminds us that relationships are not just about staying together. They're about learning how to truly love and respect one another through every season of life. Nancy has shown us that the right tools, marriage can be a place of growth, intimacy, and joy. Her story, her coaching, and her books continue to inspire couples everywhere to build a partnership that thrives, not just survives. Nancy, thank you for pouring your heart, your knowledge, and your passion into today's conversation. And to all of you tuning in, remember love that lasts is built one choice, one word, and one moment of connection at a time. Until next time, this has been Tea Time with Miss Liz, one cup, one conversation, and one change at a time. And I will see you on Tuesday, same time, same place, and we'll do it all over again.
Thank you, Miss Liz.